Hello everyone, it's Silvia. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about freaks and strange decks and really weird characters and why we love them so much. This is actually a VR to Marine from the Waves of Your Soul, so these are my strange decks. So the reason why I decided to join into this tag is because I probably have a thing for weird, strange decks. And I don't say that with any kind of shame whatsoever. It is what it is. We all have different tastes, and that's what makes the world beautiful because we're all different. So when it comes to weird decks, though, I think that there's a bit of a distinction to be made, or maybe some kind of a disclaimer. I'm not one of those that believe that strange needs necessarily to be dark. And I am quite a strong advocate of the opposite. If something is strange, it's because it's different from us. And that could be, if we pay attention to it, it could be a way for us to understand reality a little bit better. Because if we base our studies on human nature, behavioral sciences, but also medicine in general, if we always study the same thing, if we dissect to the smallest part something that we've seen over and over and over again, and that it looks exactly like the same thing that we've dissected before, at the end of the day, we're not learning anything new, but it is the moment in which we step out of our comfort zone and we decide to focus on something we've never seen before, and that as a consequence, it is strange to us, it is different from us. That's the moment in which we finally can make a discovery. So I am so happy to join into this stack because recently I've acquired this stack and it's a new one. I also think that it's not just new to me, but it's new in general in the sense that I haven't seen it before. It was on sale on Tevada for the month of January, I think. It was on pre-order, sorry, not on sale. It was on pre-order for the month of January on Tevada, and then I finally decided to pull the trigger and got this deck. This is the Soul Splash Tarot, and I'm pretty sure that this is by far one of the strangest decks that I've got in my collection. And I know that this is not everyone's cup of tea. So you will hear me saying this sentence throughout this video probably a dozen times. This is not everyone's cup of tea, and I'm fully aware of that. But only because not everyone will like this deck doesn't mean that this deck will not find this niche, someone that will actually be a fan of how weird and strange and freakish this deck truly is. And it's also because it is one of those decks that have a very strong reminiscence of manga. So the characters that you will see in these cards will definitely look like manga. So let me just zoom in because obviously we want to see them properly. And I would say that the cost of this deck was not your usual. Sometimes, especially in Tevada, we're looking to spending about $100, and sometimes the shipping is included. This one has all of the features of an indie deck, and it is an indie deck. But it was actually priced at, I believe it was 61 Australian dollars. I didn't end up buying it from Tevada. I bought it from Vermilion Collection, which is, I believe they sell a lot of Tevada decks. And it arrived within a week and a half. No, actually, sorry. Yeah, a week. Actually, it took a week for it to be delivered, so I'm very happy about that. I'm very happy with the cost. It was free delivery. And it's, it comes with these 2-part box and this little white book, which is always helpful because you never know. And I always appreciate, as you know, I always appreciate reading what the author decided when they were thinking about that particular card. So it will be always interesting. So as you can see here, it gives you a little bit of, there's just an affirmation here. For example, for the Fool, it says, dance gracefully on the edge of the cliff, mastering all madness is freedom. The Fool sits boldly on a fierce beast's head. So it does give you a bit of a description of the card itself, which is always nice to have. And then it talks about the character, and I believe that that's about it. Yes, it is fine. It's totally fine because I wasn't necessarily expecting a lot more. In some cases, these decks, they come to you and sometimes they have the guidebook in Chinese or in Thai, depending on where they come from, where they've been produced. And it's actually is really good. I like it when there is a description of what is happening on the card. So let's have a look at the cards themselves. And I'm pretty sure that there's going to be a lot of people saying, not for me, don't really like it. It is fine. Everything is acceptable. Everyone has got a different taste. But for me, I have to confess that, yes, I am fascinated by the strange and the different and the freak. And that's for the reasons that I was mentioning before. So I believe that we learn something more, something new about life if we pay attention to something that is not exactly, that doesn't look exactly like us. And perhaps this comes from the fact that I am Italian, but I don't look Italian. I'm sure that you can tell. I come from, well, my mom and dad had blonde hair, and actually my mom had red hair and brown eyes, but my dad was very fair-haired and blue eyes. And what happens is that I'm the result of my parents. And when you have strawberry blonde hair in a classroom of 33 pupils at elementary school, and you're the only one who's not dark-haired, you look strange, you look different. So let's have a look at the cards. Sorry, while I'm talking. You look different. And what happens is that sometimes I was actually mocked for being different, which is kind of a normal reaction when you think about kids. Children can be really cruel sometimes. But I never felt bad about it. I always thought that that could make me more interested in others that were also different like me. And so that has stayed with me. So in the meantime, I'm showing you the cards, and I'm pretty sure that many of you by now are probably skipping to the next deck. This is not a deck for the faint of heart. As you can see, and as I warned you, these images are really weird. They are very freakish. And all of the characters have these characteristics that they look pretty much out of a manga. Probably one of the horror ones because of the teeth that you can probably see in all of these characters, unless their mouth is closed like in this case, but this is the Justice card. But there we go again with the teeth. I personally, when I saw this deck, I personally asked myself if I really wanted to pull a card, read with this deck, and one day pull a card that would look at me with red eyes and this kind of smile. And I said yes, I really do. And the reason why I'm saying that is because not everything is perfect. Not everything that we see in life is perfect. As a matter of fact, 99% of what we see in life is imperfect. And when it comes to the reproduction of life in a tarot, we have too many times seen that the creators have made the mistake, probably by peer pressure, of trying to reproduce what they thought was related to tarot when it's a modern take on the RWS as something really perfect. So really beautiful bodies, picture perfect bodies, no diversity. Look at this Lost card. Isn't it just really, really powerful? I really like this. And also this Be Yourself. Which one is the true face? Because it looks like the true face, the mask is the normal looking face, and the true face is actually this devil looking face. So this is this kind of deck. This is what it will force you to look at, and it will also by forcing you to look at the strange characters, it will also force you to make some consideration as a consequence of that. So the Ace of Wands, for example, and please notice that this character is wearing the same ring as I am. I really love that. So there is this staff, but it's broken. It's broken in pieces, so much so that one of the two eyes actually, is visible through it. And again, with the smile, there is the sense of the spark that comes whenever we think about the Ace of Wands and the fiery energy that goes with it. But at the same time, there is a sense of mischief. And the Two of Wands, and I know that this is very difficult to qualify as a yearning smile, but this to me is a yearning smile. So imagine someone who is absolutely normal, but that is looking outside of a window and yearning for something that is different. And that would be the expression on their face. And so on. I mean, I'm not going to show you all of the cards. We're not going to talk about all of the cards because otherwise what's going to happen is that I'm only going to talk about this deck, and then I'm going to realize that time is flying, and then I'm going to have to fly through the other decks that I'm going to show you today. But I would love for someone to let me know whether you agree with me or not, that it is very important not just to accept differences in people, but also to appreciate them and be interested in knowing more, because I strongly believe that that is the only way that we have to advance in our knowledge. Understanding and appreciating differences is the way for us to evolve as a species. And yes, it probably does come from the fact that I was different. I mean, you try to be a strawberry blonde in a classroom of kids of age 6 to 10, and they're all, obviously clearly Italian. I did not look like anyone else. Finally, then when I joined high school, there was another girl that looked exactly like me, and of course she is still one of my best friends to this day. So we're still in touch because it's almost like saying freaks unite, because that's what we felt. We were drawn to each other because we looked similar in, a whole classroom that looked completely different from us. And then, when you go to uni, because it's the uni I went to is a pretty important universities, the second university in Europe. So obviously there's a lot of foreign students. So there were a lot of people coming from the northern country in Europe, and they were also blonde. And so it was easier to just look at the mirror sometimes and knowing that I don't look like the country that gave me birth, which is fine. So this is the Soul Splash Tarot. This is by far one of my strangest decks. But I have to say, I do quite like it. I love this maroon orangey kind of edging. Really, really in theme with the deck, I would say. But it is time to show you another deck, because I do have a few today. And so I really love the selection Marine made, and I'm trying my best not to show you the same decks that she showed. And by the way, her video will be linked in the description box below for you to check it out if you haven't already. And as I said, I'm trying my best to choose different decks. It wasn't difficult because honestly, probably, as I said, more than half of my collection includes decks that are to a certain extent a little bit strange or weird or different. The next one is the Deviant Moon, but in this case I chose the paradoxical edition because I really come to love this deck. This is a deck that is very different from the original standard. I don't know how to call it, the original edition of the Deviant Moon by Patrick Valenza. And this is different because it is paradoxical, so obviously I'm pointing to the aesthetics of it. It is different because the aesthetics are different. as you can see here. So it is a very specific type of manipulation of the colors in which it's almost as if you still remember working with analog photography, the film rolls, when you were developing them and you were looking through the negatives that were called negatives, you know, the frames, the colors would have been almost as if you were looking at an X-ray. And so this is called paradoxical, but that is literally what the method has, what the method is, in which Patrick has taken the Deviant Moon, the original edition, and then it went through the process of exchanging these colors, basically. So almost as if you were looking through an X-ray image of the original version of the Deviant Moon. Okay, it took me a while, but I got there finally. I hope that I made that clear because it wasn't easy. These are really beautiful because they're different, but it's also because thanks to their being freakishly different, and let me tell you, the border, the Deviant Moon tarot is a freak by itself. And please understand, but when I say freak, it's not in a derogatory way. I feel like I am a freak many, many times. I mean, look at my nails, look at my, look at the rings that I love wearing. Of course, I'm a freak as well. But I've always felt different. So it is with a certain dose of affection that I'm actually pronouncing the word freak, because I really love that I do belong to that category as well. But that's saying that the Deviant Moon is very strange, very weird, even the original edition. And when you do this kind of process of inverting the colors, it becomes even weirder, even stranger. But ironically, what happens is that I actually bonded a lot more with this deck, probably because the colors are so different. What happens when I look at the cards, in specific, some of these ones, the Hermit card is very powerful, and it's also quite confrontational. When I look at it, because the colors are different, it creates some kind of a slow process in my brain of recognition, because my brain goes, the colors are different, what is happening? And so you can see all of the mechanisms turning, and my brain going, okay, well, let's try and understand it better. And so I actually focus, not even it's not even a let's say, a wanted process. It's not something that I'm forcing myself to do. It's my brain that automatically does that, because there is not that initial recognition of, let's say, the character looking in a certain way. We understand, my brain understands that something is going on here, and in order for it to understand what is going on, I need to pay more attention, which ironically leads me to appreciate the cards even more. This deck also has a completely different kind of vibe than the original edition. I would say if you don't have it, I bought this one when I was in Ho Chi Minh City from LT Tarot, and I'm super happy to tell you that LT Tarot has been recognized by the Tokyo Tarot Museum. They have actually named LT Tarot one of the best distributors of indie and mass market decks in Southeast Asia. So I am so excited for them, because honestly, I cannot tell you how embarrassed and upset I was that someone made a comment on my Instagram account when I was showing this deck, saying that they were fake just because they were located in Vietnam. I do not tolerate comments like that. Of course, I know that there's a lot of fake decks overall, but if when you see a deck by a legitimate tarot shop that is actually really striving to maintain an ethical conduct in an industry where there's so many fake decks, and because of that they're actually kind of struggling, because as you can imagine, if you can get this deck for $5 instead of the $100 that I spent for it, then of course there's a lot of people going, a lot more going for the $5 version, not the $100 version. So obviously LT and also Mystic House, I think it's called Mystical, or Mystic House in also in Ho Chi Minh City, they are really struggling because they're not selling that much. But they are commendable even more so because they're not caving and selling fake decks. So I was very embarrassed when that person made that comment. And but at the same time, I didn't want to remove that comment because I wanted people to see how unfair it is to just automatically say, oh, it comes from Sada Vanyam, so of course it's fake. No. And now that the Tokyo Tarot Museum has officially recognized LT Tarot as a distributor of these decks, I'm super happy about it because, you know, it's almost as if that shop was vindicated, but also myself. So it is something good. So as I was saying, I really love it. I don't know whether it's still available. You may try and check out the website, lttarot, I think, .com, and reach out to them. If you send them an email, they will answer. I know that some of you actually did reach out to me and bought either this or another deck from them. And they are really lovely. So they obviously need your address and all these kind of things. If it's still in stock in their shop, they'll be happy to sell it to you if they can ship to your location, obviously. Then moving on to the next deck that I believe is also one of those decks that I have to go all the time. This is not everyone's cup of tea. I believe this is only the third time that I said that in this video, so bear with me, there's gonna be more. So this is the Tarot Obscuro by Lara Gliboskaya. I backed this Kickstarter last year and then I received this deck probably around November. I love this deck so much, but it is very weird. It is one of my strangest decks. And there's no, as I said, I don't have any problem in recognizing that. Yes, my taste is weird. Yes, my taste is different. So be it. That's the reason why, you know, there's still people producing these decks because they know that we love them freaks. And obviously, of course, I had to buy it. I love that there's this process of starting from photography because you can clearly tell. And then there's this sort of manipulation of that photography, but done in a way that it shows the personal interpretation of the creator. And that to me is really interesting. It talks about the way in which they see life. And it talks about struggles sometimes, of course, as you can see here. And it talks about strangeness, like in the hermit here. It talks about barriers, like you can see here, because the hermit is wearing what looks like a really odd headwear of some kind that covers their faces as well. And so there is a barrier. And then it talks about hostility because this is the emperor, but their head looks like it's covered in spikes. And so it talks about pushing people away, but doing so because they are the emperor and they are the ones that have to reestablish order after the chaos. And so they're not here to make any friends. Or the Nine of Cups, in which technically this is the card of the wish come true and you should be happy, but the expression on the face of this person is almost of boredom, probably because they have been waiting for so long for that thing to happen, and when it finally does, they lost all the sheen. Or the sun, which is supposed to communicate joy, but it's a sign made out of stone. And so that is very symbolic to me because when a sun is made out of stone, it's actually very cold instead of being hot. And so on and so forth. I could talk about this deck for hours. I really like this approach, as I said. It is, again, very confrontational and probably a bit triggering for some people. I completely understand if you want to skip ahead because, as I said, this is not for the faint of heart. But then again, how many decks do we have like that? And probably this one is a little bit more confrontational because it starts from photography. And so obviously the process in your brain in this case goes, oh, okay, that's a photo of the person. And then there's the shock because there's always let's say a small element up to a bigger element that does not belong in the card itself. So the brain understands that there has been some kind of a manipulation done here. And as a consequence of that, we ask ourselves whether we like it or not. I personally like it, but again, I understand when people wouldn't. This is, by the way, I believe that I started a video saying that when we talk about weird decks and strange decks, they don't always have to be dark decks. This one is. This one is not, I wouldn't say it's a balanced deck. I would say it is one of those decks that you probably want to use when you're doing shadow work. The the paradoxical and borderless edition of the Deviant Moon is a balanced deck. Ironically, it is a really balanced deck. And I'm going to show you another deck that I strongly believe being one of those freaks that we love so much. And it's the Star Power Tarot by Zigzag Girl. This deck is one of, I believe, three. There's three decks that have been, tarot decks that have been produced by Zigzag Girl. One is the Mars Power, one is the Moon Power, this is the Star Power. I always, whenever I can choose between planets, celestial bodies, I will always go for stars. It is because obviously the star card in a major arcana is the card that represents the zodiac sign of Aquarius, which is my sign as well. But it's also because that is one of the cards that most communicates something that I really, really hang on to at any time in my life, which is hope and also the guidance from the ancestors. So always go for the star in my case. But this is really weird. I mean, look at this Two of Wands, for example. This is clearly a person that has mouths, three mouths, one in the usual place and then two to cover their eyes. And yes, it is weird. It's absolutely weird, but or even this sword, for example, or the Ten of Cups, and we see a person sitting on a moon, but this is a personified kind of moon because it does have a face almost as if it were a human. And this Eight of Swords is really, really powerful. And you can see this in pretty much every card. Every card has some kind of element of freakishness to them. I love the Six of Swords, by the way. This is probably one of the cards that I love the most out of this deck. The Six of Swords is always generally implying a transition, and because of that, there is the sense of movement. But in this card, I actually understand it because there is the sense of try and protect the weak, trying and go to the side of the river where you will feel safe, and you want to do that because of who you're trying to protect. So this is to me an additional layer. This is not just a person that has to embark upon this journey that they don't necessarily want to do, but it's also they understand that I have to do it to protect this cat, for example. And you will see that there is the element of what is still present in here. So you will still be able to tell that there is this sense of transaction, of movement, but at the same time it's also raining. So the circumstances are very dire, and there is still this sense of wanting to reach the safer part of the river, the safer shore. And look at this Ten of Swords, for example. We don't have a person be stabbed on the back by 10 swords, but there is this sense of being completely let down by life, and almost as if they were really touching rock bottom, because that's what they're doing with their head here. So there are a lot of cards that are really weird, really freakish, very, very interesting to me. Also very busy, I will have to say. This is one of the busiest decks that I've got. Another one would definitely be the Rain Coast Tarot, because that one certainly is probably even busier than this deck. And only because an image has got a lot of symbols in it, it doesn't necessarily make it weird, but in this case there are a lot of weird symbols, so obviously it does make it weird. Now this one is amazing because it shows you that there's actually two animals, and I really love that concept. So this is the strength card, and you see the character holding a dog in here, but then they're also turning their back to this, I don't know how to call it, if not monster, not in a bad way, but this looks like something that doesn't necessarily have a name in the animal world. But they're turning their back to it, and so it looks almost as if this monster is actually there to protect them. And I don't know, the symbol here in the Justice card, these look like doors. So there is the sense of saying maybe we have to look into different doors or through different doors in order to find the balance that is brought by justice. And the Nine of Pentacles, which is, you know, the windfall that comes your way, but at the same time, it is wearing many masks. And so you will ask yourself whether it is indeed something positive that you received or not. And the High Priestess, that is, it looks like she's smoking a joint, for example. And the answer, number 42, if you're a fan of sci-fi, and you read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, you will know why the number 42 is very important. And so she is actually reading that. And the Lover's card, which is very freaky-ish, I would say. I love each and every one of these cards. I don't necessarily have to understand all of them. I don't necessarily have to understand the reason why the creator has made these particular choices. But that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate them, because I actually do. And I find it incredibly interesting. And also, this is one of the decks that by trying and understand it, by trying and focus on the images and understand the reason why we can see all of these eye bulbs, for example, on the Four of Pentacles, is because this way you can keep a proper control, you can keep a proper look of everything that you have that you want to protect and you want to hold on your chest, close to your chest. So when you, let's say, you go further than being stopped at the weirdness of it all, I believe that there's a whole universe waiting for you that needs to be discovered. And that can actually be an incredibly fulfilling experience. So this is the Star Power Tarot, as I said, one of my favorite. This is also, ironically, I know that it makes me really strange, but this is one of the decks that I actually take with me when I travel, because I love it as a conversation starter. Whenever I travel, there will be people that as soon as I know that I read tarot, they will ask me for a reading, and then I will show them this deck. More often than not, they will say that they want me to do a reading with a different deck, which is absolutely fine, but it will be a conversation starter. And another one that I also have to say, it's not for the faint of heart. This is not everyone's cup of tea. There are a couple of cards in this deck that are quite confrontational and can be triggering, so I caution, you know, I ask you to skip ahead if you don't like to see these cards. So we're talking about the Welcome to Night Vale, or the Hayworth Tarot, sorry. So this is called the Hayworth Tarot, and it's based on the podcast Welcome to Night Vale. There's also a Welcome to Night Vale tarot deck that is actually different from this one, but this is my favorite one, and it's also the strangest one. And of course, we had to start with a word card. I mean, look at this word card. It is weird. It's weird, 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 weird. Weird, 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 weird. I mean, yes, I don't even have to explain how in this case weird can mean also darker, because this is another one of those examples. The Star Power, absolutely not. That is a balanced deck, if you can believe it. That is a deck that you don't necessarily have to use just for shadow work. This one, I would say, you may start with a balanced reading, but whenever you pull one of the weirder cards, it would just, you know, it would just be a one-way direction towards shadow. I love it though. It's one of my favorites. I don't often use it, and I have to say that There's a lot of people that would say, don't use this deck if I mean, look at the Six of Pentacles. Isn't it just so intense? I don't do readings for my members with this deck unless they specifically ask me. And to be honest with you, I've been doing a reading for my members for over 14 months now, and not once every 2 weeks, and not once have I been asked to use this deck. So I think it's safe to say that most people would not want a reading to be done with this deck. But I do use it for myself every now and then, because this deck is really speaking loudly. It's shouting. This deck is really shouting, and whatever it is shouting, it's something that you want to listen to. This is one of the most triggering cards, I believe, and it's still the Strength card. I don't know why people, when they create a deck, they think that the Strength card is confrontational. Maybe because you need a solid premise to face that card. You know, there's struggle, obviously, there's going back and forth, and there's a lot that needs to be started again, and there are a number of reasons why I would see that this card could be confrontational. Love this Two of Cups. I know that it's weird, I know that it's creepy, but I still love it, and it makes me think of the Addams Family. And there's a couple of episodes in the Addams Family, the older one, the one with oh gosh, I don't remember the name of the actor. He only passed away probably 5-6 years ago, the actor playing Gomez. But in any case, so that was the original one in black and white, and it was a TV show. It wasn't actually the movie. And there was an episode in which Hand actually finds a girlfriend. And that could be it. And I really like it. I really like the concept, you know. No one wants to be alone. The Hanged One, very powerful. All of these ones, very, very powerful. The Queen of Cups, very powerful, but also very creepy. Yes, this is one of the decks that I would say, this is not just strange, this is also creepy. I remember Maureen making a distinction, and she said that sometimes decks can be seen as strange, but sometimes are actually iconic. So if you think about the very first production of the Thoth deck, for example, that would have looked really weird when compared to the RWS or the Marseille. That would have looked really weird. And so when can we safely say that something is weird, but it's not iconic? I don't know that. I don't know that, because to me, what is weird is interesting, and so it can become iconic depending on how much I want to invest in understanding that deck. Moving on, we still have 3 to go, so we're moving on to the Yokai Tarot, and I had to show you one of my Yokai decks. I chosen this one because this is the most recent acquisition, and I'm happy to say that towards the end of the year, there will be another Yokai deck, not a tarot deck, but an oracle deck, and I cannot wait for them to release it, because it looks like it's got not just the name and you see the title, let's say, with the name of the yokais, but also a keyword associated to them. And I cannot wait, because that was literally what I was missing from the Oracle de Camilla yokai, because that French oracle is really gorgeous. The colors are amazing. The art style is amazing. The concept is fantastic. But not having keywords actually makes me think twice before I start using it, unfortunately. But this one is the tarot deck, is the Yokai Tarot, and this is the one that has been released maybe 6 months ago by Lo Scarabeo. It is really beautiful. I've come to love the color palette, which is very unique, I would say. It is a limited color palette, but when you look at the way in which the characters are represented, it feels that it's the right color palette to use, or at least to me. And yes, there is the Hanged One, and yes, it is a woman spider. Yes, you've seen it correctly. Yes. Of course, this is really strange, is really weird. Is it creepy? Yes, at times it's also creepy. Not Amaterasu. Amaterasu is the goddess of the sun in the yokai. She's not necessarily a yokai, but she's a deity. And she has been involved in this myth of the sun that has been stolen and then brought back. And she is the goddess of the sun because she is as beautiful as the sun. And so there's a number of stories here. This would be a fantastic deck to study. And I'm happy to say when I started my membership over a year ago, the first deck that we started studying with my members was actually the Yokai Yochi. So the indie edition, let's say, not the indie edition, but the indie deck that started my passion with the Yokai decks. My passion with Yokai has started well before the Yokai deck because I knew about Japanese folklore. I think that everyone in Italy loved Japan. We have so many translated Japanese authors that are very popular in Italy. For example, Banana Yoshimoto, she's been writing so many books and I read them all, and I read them all in Italian. But also Murakami, for example, is really loved in Italy, really, really loved. And many others that have been translated, and people, we just devour Japanese literature. There's no two ways around that. We absolutely love it. And so, yes, I believe that this is easier to understand as an iconic deck, I would say, because it is based on this kind of folklore. So it is very iconic, the Yokai Tarot. But then I have two left, and I'm just debating which one to show you first. I'm probably going to go with this one. So bear with me because, again, this is another controversial deck. Not controversial because of the images, or rather, yes, it is because of the images, obviously, because of the artwork that has been used in the images. But at the same time, it's not one of those decks that is controversial because it's confrontational or because it's triggering. So this is the Lorenzi Tarot by Irene Lorenzi. This is published by US Games. It's a deck from probably 2-3 years ago. I can't recall. It is a weird kind of production. The value is very good though. But I will have to say this guidebook, even though I really appreciate that it's in full color, because these images are actually really beautiful. At least they looked beautiful to me. At the same time, I don't see a lot explained in the writing here. So when I see a card like this one, which is the sun, for example, and this is clearly David Bowie. I mean, hello, yes, it is David Bowie, but nowhere here is it mentioned that it's David Bowie. So I would have probably appreciated a little bit more of a description rather than just the let's say the mentioning that there's a couple of symbols here. So what it says here says, the sun shines on an imaginative and surreal world made of floating islands. On the largest island, two androgynous twins bask peacefully in a river. Two flamingos fly in luminous skies. The number 2 recurring in this card represents duality and the union of elements. I like that there is this kind of numerological and also kind of alchemical approach to the sun card because it is very important. But they could have just said that the two androgynous twins that are lookalike of David Bowie or inspired by David Bowie. I don't know. It's just that it is so obvious. And there is a description of the card, but at the same time, they don't tell me that. So it doesn't make me doubt myself because I know 100% that this is David Bowie. But in any case, this is what you can see basically. And it is a really beautiful guidebook, but it doesn't really help you a lot when interpreting the cards. And as I said, look away, skip ahead if this is not one of the decks that you prefer. Because let's face it, it is very strange. There's a little bit of everything here. You have a dove with some kind of a portal or door inside like this. You have peacocks stemming from a hand, a human hand. The wall card is very beautiful. You have a stag with a giant stag with a pink flamingo flying between the horns. You have two really beautiful but very weird giraffes that are worshipping a heart, which is encased in the sun. You have conjoined twins and unicorns, but they're not just unicorns because they have the mermaid tail. So is that a uni mermaid or something like that? I don't know. So there's a lot of really weird stuff happening in this deck, in each and every card. And also what I hear as a, let's say, a complaint about this deck by a lot of people that have tried seeing whether they like it or not is that we don't necessarily go straight to the meaning of the card. It's not necessarily one of those decks that is traditional or that follows the RWS. It is a very weird take on the cards and on tarot in general. Does it mean that it's difficult to read? Yes, possibly. If you don't know this deck, you'll probably find it very difficult to read at first because you don't necessarily associate a someone walking on a rope with the magician, even though you can get there. If you ask yourself, if you dig deeper, you definitely can get there. But at the same time, there's a Four of Swords, and this is not your typical Four of Swords. So obviously, you see all of these doves that have it looks like they're almost cargo planes because they have a sort of a door on their belly, and out of the door, you see this person hanging for their life. So this is clearly odd, it's clearly strange and weird. And does that speak of the Four of Swords? Not necessarily. What I see is exhaustion. So it's not, to me, that doesn't speak of the Four of Swords. Yes, of course there is exhaustion in the Four of Swords because you need to take a rest, but it is one step before that. So you're still hanging on for dear life. There is movement. I don't see movement in the Four of Swords. The Star card is another card that everyone says, I don't really like the fact that we see this person with a leg that is amputated. So it could be very triggering, and I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable looking at these cards. And so that's why I always say it's totally fine if you want to skip ahead. However, this is one of my strangest decks, and I haven't rehomed it so far because I always find myself being fascinated by these images. I love the freaks. I love the strange. I love the weird. I love the fact that we're not all looking alike. Thank goodness for that. Because the world would be incredibly boring if we were. And so there is beauty, but also there's fascination in something that is different. So this is the Lorenzi tarot, and as I said, another deck that I would definitely not use for a reading because I would feel like people would tell me, can you redo the reading because I wanted to do it with a different deck. It's just not really resonating with me, and I get it. The last but not least, this is another deck that it is a strange deck, and it's the Tarocchi Gialli. And the reason why it's strange is because it is inspired by the Giallo genre, which is, Giallo means yellow in Italian. And when you speak about a genre which is called Giallo, you think about horror or mystery or thrillers. And the origin of that came from the, let's say, actually, I don't think I've ever explained what the origin of the term is. This has been inspired by the movie posters from the horror movies from the 60s and the 70s, and probably also the beginning of the 80s. If we look at Italian directors like Mario Bava and Dario Argento. Dario Argento is well known internationally, and yes, he is the father of Asia Argento. And let's say he made a really famous movie called Phenomena. That is, to my knowledge, probably the most popular movie in the international scene. But in Italy, we all know all of the other movies that he's made, which are absolutely, I love them. But then again, my taste is different from most people. I love horror genre when it comes to writing and also when it comes to movies. But the original reason why in Italy you always speak about the genre giallo, as in let's say thriller or horror, is because there was a publishing company that back in the 50s were publishing a lot of mystery, horror, speculative genre, very disturbing kind of short books, novellas, probably more than novels. And the cover were always, or the back of, let's say the background of the cover were always yellow, like canary yellow. And then there was obviously an image on top of the cover. But when we were talking about that, there were so many books published by this publisher, and they were all of the same genre. And so it came to be referring to that. So if you go to Italy and you ask for a giallo, then everyone knows what you're asking for. Everyone knows the genre you're referring to. So these are the Tarocchi Gialli, the yellow tarot, so the ones that have been inspired by those movies, or the posters in specific of those movies. And so they are kind of weird because of that. They are strange because of that. But I have to say, this is a deck that was a Kickstarter campaign, again, that I backed a few months ago, and I love it so much. Look at this. This is, I believe this is actually an actress, an Italian actress that used to act in one of those movies. This is a deck that as soon as I unboxed it and as soon as I went through it and I was reading parts of the guidebook, it went straight to my heart, and it's still that, it's still part of it because I really love it. I find it to be incredibly deep, incredibly powerful. I love the aesthetics of it, and yes, I definitely recognize some of those posters in the sense that it's not based on posters, it's inspired by those posters, so there wouldn't have been a poster that would look exactly like this one. But you do see why I'm saying that this is really strange, this is really odd and weird and creepy in many, many cases. And the titles are really weird as well, and there's a lot of Italian here, which I love because I am Italian, so this is actually my native language, so I have absolutely no problem in reading what it says in these cards. It reads almost as if it were a let's say, I don't know whether this exists, but whatever you think of as a speculative genre in writing, in novels, for example, or also in movies, this reads like a speculative tarot. Does that make sense? I don't know. Am I introducing a new concept in the tarot world? That would be really cool. I don't know whether someone has already come out with that kind of category. It feels like the speculation, the speculative genre of tarot for me, because it is weird, but it's also suggesting that there are parallel universes and they're really different from ours, and yet at the same time they coexist. And so it is very disturbing because of that. But I love it. I absolutely love how weird this is, how disturbing also many of these cards are. And let me tell you, it reads like a charm. This is probably not a balanced deck. I would still recommend using this deck for mostly shadow reading. But at the same time, I have used this deck for reading for myself. And I can assure you that it's not like it was always shadow readings. It was something almost, I would say, balanced. So I am stoked to have this deck in my collection. I wish I could buy another copy because this one is already warped a little bit, as you can see here. And it kind of breaks my heart. I would love to have a pristine copy. But then again, I don't want not to use this deck. I want to use it. I want to use it for readings. So that's why I wish I could buy another one. And I might, one day I might, you never know. But that was it, that was the last one. So these are some of my strangest decks. And as I said at the beginning, can we all agree that having the possibility to get acquainted, to connect with something different than us is actually wonderful? I will leave you with that. Food for thought. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. I hope you've enjoyed this. Have a great day.